Hello everyone and welcome to Hardcore, and in the words of Joey, how you doing?
Hey yo. When you said that you know how to start it, I thought you were gonna be like bum ba da ba bum bum ba bum 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 ba da ba bum bum ba bum bum. You know?
Also a good one, yeah. Next time we start. Okay, so we're going to be talking about Friends, the cast of Friends. We're going to be
Hey
looking
yo.
at their human design charts, at the actors' human design charts, not the Friends characters' human design charts. Let's be clear about that.
Great clarification on that.
Yeah. I mean, I saw someone, I think there's someone that did an episode on human design and the Friends characters'
Oh,
human
that's dope.
design charts. Yeah, so I didn't watch it, but I thought that was interesting.
Listen to that if you want that. But if you want what we're about to talk about, listen to what we're about to talk about. There you go.
We divided this episode into two parts. So Celestina is going to take over the females, and I'm going to be talking about the men of the cast.
I am. Okay. Let's start with Jennifer Aniston because I love her. And because I feel like if you guys have seen the Friends reunion episode, let me start by saying I am a Friends super fan. I was just telling Miko I've seen every season probably like 10 times. And I feel like, no, that is not my life wasted. That is my life gained, right? Because, TV time, maybe not the best use of my time, but as a two-line, that is how I come into my chill. That was a very long story, and prefacing that I'm a Friends super fan and I'm very excited about this. And if you guys watched the Friends reunion, you would have seen that Jennifer Aniston was kind of the mouthpiece for the group, which I think is very interesting. And that's what actually sent me down this rabbit hole of looking up at least the girls' designs. And I thought that was very interesting. And then I told Miko this when we first started this podcast. And then this week she surprised me and she was all like, yo, should we do the Friends cast? And I was like, oh my God, yes. Yes, we should do the Friends cast. That's how this happened. And we are starting with Jennifer Aniston, a 5'1" splenic manifestor, which is so interesting to me because if you guys listened to our profiles episode, 5 lines baffle me oh so much. And we are going to have a lot of 5-line discussion today. So interesting that is the case. Nonetheless, Jennifer Aniston is a 5'1" splenic manifestor with the left angle cross of Revolution 1. I'm going to go a little bit more into that, but I'm going to give you the high level of all three of these ladies real quick. Miko, keep up with me on the changing the screens. Courtney Cox. She is a 3-5 emotional manifestor. What? Yes, 2 manifestors on the same show? Exactly my perplexion, guys. I don't even know if that's a word, but wild. So she has the right angle cross of Eden too. I'm going to get a little bit deeper into all of this later, but I just want to give you guys the high level right now. And last but not least, Lisa Kudrwo, playing Phoebe, a 5'2" self-projected projector. All of the 5 lines. I told you guys, it is wild up in here. She has the left angle cross of the Alpha 1. There's a lot more to go over, but I feel like this very brief overview will give you guys an understanding of the ladies of this show. So let's go back to J.A., Jennifer Aniston, Jen, Boo Boo, Kitten Jen. Can we call you that, Jen? I feel like you're probably not listening, but it's fine. Okay, so interesting to me, right? Like 5 lines in general, I think are so interesting to me. And actually to better understand the 5 line, I really look at Jen Aniston because I feel like she embodies what I believe a 5 line to be. And Miko, I'd love your take on this as well. But like when I was trying to understand the 5 line more, probably about a year and a half ago, I looked up Jennifer Aniston's when I figured out she was a 5'1" to kind of understand a little bit better about like how an aligned 5'1", because I assume she is, presents themselves. And I think I can kind of gain a bit of insight into this in the sense of like the 5 line is like you can't really look in, but they have their shit together to some extent, and they're also this also comes into play with her left angle cross of Revolution, right? But like to make intense impact. And I think it's this combination of it all, right? Like being a manifestor, being a 5-line, and also just having this left angle cross of revolution, really contributing to society when you have the platform to be able to do so, and making a really significant impact. But I think that this helped me better understand what a 5-line could be and a line 5-line. What are your thoughts on this?
So she also has the main theme of empowerment. So she's a very individual manifestor. So that also plays a big role into all of that. I don't know if she is aligned or not. I would need to know a lot more about her.
That's fair.
But it's definitely a projected field, like the second line. So yes, it's correct that people are looking at them and they're kind of seeing their own reflection or their own ideal reflection. So they put this image onto her and they think, okay, I want her to be the greatest actress, the greatest lover, the greatest friend, the greatest businesswoman, and all of these images that she is pulling towards her. It doesn't mean that she is all of these things, but this is what people are reflecting upon her, whatever they want to see in her. And that can be, of course, extremely challenging for a 5th line. And they often want to help others a lot, but they need to know who to help. They need to know which of these, whenever someone is asking for help, which one are they here to really fulfill and support others with and empower others, and which ones they need to learn to say no to. So, because if they then just accept the invitation or accept helping that other person, that becomes extremely challenging if their heart or splenic center in this case is not fully in it.
And I think it's so interesting when you think about it on like an actor or actress scale, because they're impacting people who they're not really meeting, right? Like on a day-to-day basis. Like think about it, guys. Like Jennifer Aniston's character on Friends had the Rachel haircut, and frickin' everyone and their mom got the Rachel haircut in the mid-90s, and I'm pretty sure it's coming back now. So like it's very interesting to see the impact that Jen had. Can I call you Jen? Jennifer? I feel like I need to call you Jennifer. Anyway, Jennifer had on the people that she impacted. Yeah, the people that she impacted directly and also indirectly via her character. So I think that that's also really something that we need to take into account here, right? Because we're talking about the people themselves, but the people themselves also developed this friendship outside of the show. And I think that that elevated the relationships that they were able to have within the show. So it's kind of, we're talking about both of them here, but obviously mostly the humans behind the characters. And I think that that's also just something that we need to keep in mind as well. I split their charts apart. I don't know if you went deep like this into the dudes, Miko, but this is like one of my favorite things to do, because when you split my chart apart, I become a reflector on both sides. So I split all of the ladies' charts apart. And when you split Jennifer Aniston's chart into just the personality section, she becomes a reflector, which I think is dope. And when you split her chart into just the design side, she becomes a splenic projector. Knowing how that feels on my end, I find it really interesting when I can find someone else who becomes different things when their charts are separated, because I can tell you it feels different on different days, and it's the weirdest thing. Those are kind of some of the highlights that I found from her chart in particular, and I'm going to get more into everyone's chart as we go, but I want to kind of keep this separated for you guys as well, because we're going to touch on all three of these for these three ladies as well. What I found interesting is that all three of them are single definitions, and I'll repeat that again when I go through each of these. So my understanding, also being a single definition being, is you kind of know decision making wise, like where the decision is coming from to some extent. Split definition beings and triple split definition beings can have a bit hard of a time just like understanding what part of their bodies to listen to. But I think it's really interesting that all three of these ladies happen to be single definition beings. I'm going to save the channel that I want to talk about for last, because it is freaking cool. One more last note about Jennifer Aniston before I move on to Courtney is, as a manifestor, I thought it was very interesting. She only has one defined gate in her throat, and it is gate 8. And the verbiage behind that is I contribute. And I think that that is absolutely beautiful because Friends won multiple, I don't know if it was, is it Emmys? I'm assuming it's Emmys.
Grammy?
Because it's like, no, Grammys are for singers. Emmys are for like TV shows, I'm pretty sure. Guys, I don't really watch all this stuff. But they won multiple awards in the 90s for like an ensemble, which I think is beautiful, right? So her verbiage around her throat center is I contribute, and I think that that's absolutely beautiful being in an ensemble. All right, any additional thoughts on Jen before we move to Courtney? Sorry, Jennifer, sorry, we're not really there yet. Any other thoughts, Miko?
Okay, well, not to lose the basics here as well. She's someone that has emotional solar plexus, undefined sacral, undefined root, undefined ajna, and open head. And all of the other centers are defined: spleen, self or G center, heart or will center, and throat center. Just for everyone to get a clear image that is simply listening. What I also find interesting is that this is my channel, so of course I find it interesting. She has the 2551, which is this channel of shock. And I would say she's had quite a few shocking things happen in her life. For example, as well, the relationship with Brad Pitt. That was something that was... She had this stigma attached to her for a very long time, even way after separation. And again, this is part of her projection, that people are wanting to see this perfect relationship in both of them, probably. And when it then came apart, it was probably quite sad for a lot of fans, I'm assuming. She has the 5710, so this is extremely connected to being intuitive about what is correct for you as well. So she does have direction and she understands who she is in this life. However, it's more unconscious. So this is something that developed throughout time. And the throat, as you said, is unconsciously defined. So she may not even have been very aware that she had all this manifestor power inside of her, because everything in her consciousness is reflected as being a reflector. Yeah, maybe she wasn't even aware that she had all of this power, and even the will center or willpower energy. So she might have been the driving force when it came to, come on guys, let's do this. Let's finish this last little bit, with her willpower center defined.
And it's so interesting because I think she went to LaGuardia High School in New York, which is like a singing, dancing, acting, musical instrument type school. It's the school that Fame, like the movie in the 80s, was based off of. She went to the Fame school. And I know for a fact one of her teachers were like, you're not going to make it in this industry. And straight up said that to her. She was basically just like, nah, screw you, dude. I got this. Kind of love that.
Yeah, definitely. I love these stories when it can just be in your face.
Yeah. And there's another point. Yeah. And there's another point that I want to make after we talk about Courtney, because it's very interesting and I kind of am stoked about it. So on to Courtney Cox. Literally the impetus of this episode was the fact that I Googled both of these ladies' human designs back to back. And I was like, bro, 2 manifestors on one show? How did this work? And how did it work for 10 years? And how was their chemistry so friggin' fantastic? So Courtney Cox is a 3/5 emotional manifestor with the right angle cross of Eden 2. Basically, her life's purpose is to explore the world and bring others along for the ride and kind of bring the expression into form, right? Whether that be art or acting. And I think that that's really friggin' cool. So she was born in Birmingham, Alabama, and got into acting, I think as a teen, and then moved to LA. And she was in her late 20s when she got the role of Friends, if not early 30s. She was one of the older people on the cast. And I'm so happy that she was. And this is my little fun fact. So Courtney Cox actually auditioned for the role of Rachel and vice versa. And Jennifer Aniston auditioned for the role of Monica. And then after auditioning, they were like, I feel like I'm actually more well suited for the opposite role. And I think that's so dope of them as manifestors to have acknowledged that and recognized that and really like leaned into the roles that were more suited for them. And I feel like, as a fellow manifester, I love that they were able to inform the people who were hiring them that no, I don't think this is the right choice. I think this is the right choice. And they listened. How freaking cool is that? Just a random little fun fact there. But also, getting into the personality and design split of this, another really cool insight. So when you split Courtney's personality, she is a self-projected projector. Dope. And if you split her design, she is also a reflector. And I think that that's so interesting because that often, I mean, I've seen it on my chart, but I feel like that's not the norm to split into two completely different types. So my 2 cents there. Again, she is a single definition and she has a completely open spleen, which I think is also very interesting. Like acting alongside someone who is a splenic manifestor and doesn't have her emotional solar plexus defined. So I feel like they probably complemented each other very well in that sense. Thoughts?
I think that they did complement each other. I do see quite a lot of compromises within the cast, though. So I feel like they were, while they didn't know about human design, they were still they must have been very receptive to compromising with the other person because they worked together for 10 years, as you said, and there cannot be such a strong bond between all of them if there wasn't the will to compromise, because we saw that Jennifer Aniston had the 5710, the full channel, so that creates a compromise within that Jennifer Aniston needs to take the lead in themes that concern the 5710, so it's more about these intuitive insights, but it's a quite individual channel, so it is for her. It doesn't work, the intuition doesn't work for others, but so this still needs to be taken into consideration, as well as the gate of or channel of shock, the 5125. There is also a compromise within that. So there could have been quite a bit of friction in that element. It's unconsciously defined in, I nearly said Monica, but in Courtney Cox's Mercury. So she would have been verbal about these elements as well. And with Jennifer Aniston, it's the 25th gate is consciously defined through her north node. So this is something that comes into play usually approximately after your Uranus opposition, which is at around 40 years of age. So during the filming of the show, the 25th gate was actually not such a big theme for Jennifer. So they may have actually functioned more as an electromagnetic connection, which I also find interesting, that this is most definitely not a traditional human design view of things, I'm aware, but this is how I would interpret this, that this is not something that was so present in Jennifer Aniston. So that's why it was probably functioning more as an electromagnetic channel.
So freaking cool, man. And I mean, we do grow and develop, right? Like as time goes on. And think about it. This was a show about people in their 20s. Granted, majority of their cast was like mid 20s to late 20s when it started, and probably went through late 20s to early 40s. So you really got to see these people develop, not just like character development, but like as humans develop, which is really cool. Like, and I'm sure behind the scenes, their relationships ebbed and flowed as well. So freaking cool, man.
Yeah, and another thing, what I see here in Courtney Cox's design is the fact that she has the 12th gate defined in her conscious sun. And this whole channel, or especially gate 12, is all about being in the mood to say and or do things. So I find that very interesting when it comes to looking at it from an actor's perspective, because you're not going to be in the mood to speak or do things every time you're on set. Now looking at this, I would love to see some Friends episode, and This is definitely a gate where you can hear whether or not someone is in the mood. You can hear it. And the person that has this gate, they know that they have this, especially when it's consciously defined. 100% she knows exactly what I'm talking about if she would be listening right now. But yeah, for sure, everyone around her also heard it in her voice when she was not in the mood.
It's so interesting because I know this from like a behind the scenes thing of like, she was not able to understand, or not understand, but like remember her lines very well. So she would like write her lines behind like the fruit bowl that was on the dining room table. If you guys watch the reunion, you would know this too. It's not like I'm besties with Courtney Cox, but like she would like write her lines behind the fruit bowl, and they would like mess with her and like sometimes like switch out her lines or whatever. So it's very interesting to see that 3-line piece of it come out, right? Like the very much I try, and like I'm still gonna show up here even if it's not like 100%. I'm gonna show up here, and it's really cool to kind of like see that and understand kind of the back end of it too.
Absolutely. And also, we are not entirely sure about the time of birth with Courtney Cox. So it says 1730, but it is not entirely confirmed. So once you change the time, there are some times where the channel 3536 is splitting apart. And there was another one that I did for the AM, which also slightly changed. But just this is something to take into consideration, that a few things may change around in her chart because we don't have the exact time of birth. We're assuming it's 1730 though.
Courtney, if you want to give us a buzz or hit us up on Instagram and let us know what your actual birth time was, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Miko will give you a full free reading, right? Boo.
Sure. Absolutely. Yes. She doesn't need to be invited, but yeah.
So what I think is really interesting, I put gate 25 exclamation mark, and I put that gate 25 exclamation mark because of Lisa Kudrwo's chart, and we'll get to that in just a second. But just reiterating, all 3 of these ladies have a 1-8 channel, and I think it's so dope because they all have the channel of inspiration. And we'll talk about the Penta of the full group in just a bit, but I think it's just so cool that they were literally an inspiration to a generation. And now that it's on Netflix, like it's an inspiration to another generation. So it's really cool that that was part of their essence of being so impactful to others and like really lifting other people up. Because Friends is like my go-to show when I'm down or it's like a rainy day, you know? The other note that I wanted here, again, as a manifestor, like what access do you have to your throat? So Courtney has gates 35, 12, and 8. Gate 35 being I experience, gate 12 being I try, and gate 8 being I contribute. So freaking dope.
You know what was really funny? So apparently she was known for saying, I know. And she doesn't actually have that gate defined. So I would really love to look at her asteroid regarding that. I didn't take the time to do that, but I'm sure there is an asteroid floating around in the I know part of her throat as well.
Dude, too funny. I think I told you guys, my husband like has his throat defined in the I know and fucking always goes, I know, babe. You do too.
Me
but
too.
You don't I know me as much. It's fine.
That's good. I know some other people that don't know.
But you do.
Arrogant. Yeah, because it's like an I know or I don't know. Those are the 2 voices. Either I know or I don't know.
But when you do, you're going to be like,
I know.
Boo boo kitten, I know.
Yeah, it's like an inner pressure that needs to come out. When I know something, I'm like, I know. It's not that good, I know, but...
That's how I feel about heart pulls. It's like this, like, must do it, must say something kind of thing. I get it. It's fine.
Yeah.
All right. Last but not least from the girls of Friends, Lisa Kudrwo, a 5'2", self-projected projector. Her left angle cross, her incarnation cross is the left angle cross of Alpha 1, which I think is really interesting because that's literally like alpha energy, like bringing what the pack needs to survive and also really considering safety in all of this. So I feel like she was probably very motherly in like the group. I would love to know her dynamic with the guys, because I'm very interested to see the profile and hear the profile of the guys and understand their dynamic a little bit. If you guys have seen the reunion, I feel like the guys were very lovey towards Lisa Kudrow. They had I wish I remembered what it was, but they like had a really cute nickname for her, and it was like what all the guys called her. So I'd love to know like how she led the pack, like off camera, right? With two manifestors by her side nonetheless. So just a very interesting dynamic. What stood out to me is that she's a quad left, and I'd love to hear from our resident quad left here a little bit about that. But before I do that, her personality, when you take it away from the design, is, drum roll please, she's also a reflector. Craziness, guys. Her design, when you take it apart from the personality piece, she's still a self-projected projector. But that also means that each of these ladies, in their relative / respective design and or personality, become either a projector or a reflector when their charts are separated. And I think that that's so interesting, because it definitely affects you as a human, to feel both ends of that on days when you're feeling, I don't know, just more into the design side or more into the personality side. And just kind of just depends, like if you're feeling more into your body, right? Like you feel more of the design. And it's so cool to be able to see that these ladies kind of had that essence in both sides for them. Lisa is also a single definition, and she also has the 1/8 channel of inspiration. But going back to the quad leftness, Miko, I saw your eyes widen when I said this, because a fellow quad lefter. Do you feel like you're as quirky as like the Phoebe character, though?
Definitely not. I don't even know if she was as quirky as the Phoebe character. No, but I mean, the quad left is connected to the variables, and that is the old generation, quote unquote, because we're moving to quad rightness, and quad left is still a very old version of our thinking and being. So our whole school system and our way of teaching things and the way to do the work, and the people that we also tend to look up to are very quad left, because these are individuals, and she has the head and ajna defined, so she can really remember. She probably didn't have an issue remembering her lines. However, it is unconsciously defined. But usually if she would just simply step into the flow of things, she would learn her script, and then she would step into the flow once she's on set. It wouldn't have been a problem for her to really remember her lines and know what she's talking about. So it's really a library, an inspiration that comes from within her. She has the ability to structure and conceptualize things, which is usually always the same way. So a defined ajna has the same way of conceptualizing things over and over again. She has the logical channel defined, so she's very focused on details. And again, we're seeing empowerment and sharing. So all of the casts are really focused on empowering and sharing. Even the guys, it's all about empowering and sharing. So the tribal aspect is not really present in any of them. And still, they managed to create this group. And we're going to be coming to the Penta aspects later on. But this is going to be a big reason of why they were such a strong force, such a strong group together, because they don't have any tribal energies. Of course, they have a few gates here and there. You can also see it right now here in Lisa Kudrwo, for example, the 59, and I do know that some of the others have the gate 6, or also a few, maybe 27, and I don't know if anyone had the 50, but that is a very tribal energy as well, very family-oriented energy. So together they formed a full definition. I don't know if it was a single definition, but all the centers are defined. So there was basically no space for anyone else to butt in. So they did feel very comfortable with one another.
Dude, that casting director must have just had like a knack for bringing people together. Now we need to look into the casting director's human design. God damn it.
Yeah, and I thought that was also interesting because the only thing that this group is lacking, quote unquote, I mean, they didn't really lack anything, but if you look at it from a penta, and for everyone that doesn't know what a penta is, it's basically just focusing on the channels between the throat, the G center, and the sacral. So it's the 6 channels that are connecting those 3 centers together. And the only one that they don't have is gate 13. So that's the only thing that they're missing in their penta. And that is about, it's not even, I mean, it's really not relevant for them because they had other people supporting them in this aspect. It was all about accounting, taking care of the financial aspects, like really focusing on, okay, how is it moving forward with the financial aspects of things, but they didn't have to worry about it. However, there was a moment, I also know a few things about Friends. There was a moment where they found out that they're not earning the same amount of money, and they then collectively together said that they all want to earn the same amount of money, and if they don't, the show is over. So then they agreed to, of course, pay them the same amount of money. And I thought this was also such a sweet, empowering aspect in this group. So they really fought for one another and stood up for one another.
I think they were genuinely friends, or are genuinely friends. It's so cool. It's so freaking cool. The other, I guess, note is that I mentioned that Courtney Cox has gate 25. Lisa Kudrwo has gate 51. So that's a fun little connection between the two of them. Obviously, Jennifer has the whole channel, but I thought that was a fun little connection between the two of them. And then the 3 of them kind of just like make that absolutely amazing. The connection from the ego center, coming from 2 ego centers presenting you this, to the G center. And Lisa's throat, I think, is pretty vocal. Actually, it is the most vocal as a projector in comparison to the manifestors, which I think is so interesting. So she has 4 gates in her throat that she has access to. Gate 62, I think. Gate 56, I believe. Gate 31, I lead. And gate 8, I contribute. And I think it's so interesting that she has more gates accessible to her than both the manifestors on the show do. So just a fun little weird side note tangent.
Yep, but she has to be invited. That's the thing about projectors. Well, it's the thing about throat centers in general. However, when you're a manifestor, you do have the manifesting action behind it. So you have the motor attached to it. But as a projector, you definitely need to be invited. There are also some generators that need to be invited, and reflectors need to be invited, even if you have a defined throat center. And again, also this leadership role that we see here, the 731, it's also a channel that needs to be invited out. So she needs to be invited into the leadership position for this group, which I'm pretty sure that she has been. I don't know much, if anything, about how they worked, how the dynamics behind the scenes were, but I'm pretty sure that this must have been the case, that she was somewhat of a guiding and leadership force in the team.
Yeah, I feel like the reunion to some extent gives you a really good insight into their dynamic. And again, like I said, Jennifer seemed to take the lead in most conversations, and I thought that was really interesting. Like when they were being interviewed by James Corden. I haven't seen any interviews from the 90s, but maybe I will look that up after this, because now I'm just going to dive down the rabbit hole, as one does.
Yeah, and I can imagine that a manifestor like Jennifer Aniston overpowers others in some instances when being interviewed, but who knows how it was when it was really down to organizing everyone in the Friends cast. So really when there were just all 6 of them, how it worked.
Yeah. And the other thought that came to mind when I was looking up, especially Courtney's not versus, but like Courtney's juxtaposed, my favorite SAT word, to Jennifer's, I feel like there's manifestor superiority to some extent. That's kind of the vibe that I get. As a manifestor, I've felt that in the presence of other manifestors, particularly 5-1s. Sorry, 5-1s out there. But I've felt diminished by a 5-1's presence. And again, right, like a 5 line is projected. I get it. So maybe that's what I'm feeling in comparison to them. And it's not every 5-1 I've been in like the presence of, but I wonder if the cast kind of just lets her do her thing during like those interview periods. Because again, going back to the reunion piece of it, I don't recall Courtney speaking much in the interview piece. And granted, some of the questions were geared specifically to like towards people, but when the question was geared towards the group, 90% of the time Jennifer was the one responding. So I think it's very interesting seeing the 5 line as part of the personality versus as part of the design. I think it makes an impact, and just seeing their dynamic, knowing that they're both 5 lines, again, one being personality and one being design, I think it helps me understand the 5 line better and what presents itself more dominantly when kind of in these social settings.
Yeah, but also we need to take into consideration this 12/22, because maybe she wasn't in the mood to speak on that day.
That's
so
fair.
That's always a big one for this channel. And however, you are correct that even for everyone looking outside in, I think Jennifer was the main role for some reason. I don't know why that is, because it is 6 friends, but somehow she does stand out. She was a role model for a lot of people, and she does seem like the main character.
So interesting. Even though it was an ensemble. Wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think we've dug pretty deep into the ladies.
Now let's go to the men.
All you, boo. I'm going to continue sipping on my vino.
So I would like to start with Mathew Perry. I always find stories like his very sad. Like Heath Ledger is another one like that. Robin Williams is another individual like that, where I really would have loved to help and support them in some way. And he was someone that really supported a lot of people when it came to drug abuse. So he was suffering from this, but he also wanted to help others to get out of this habit and this vicious circle. And I thought that was very interesting, especially when we're going to look at the pentas later on. So we can also again see a single definition here. He again also has the 2551 channel, unconsciously defined, very interesting. So the channel of shock again. This is really a transformative channel if you are stepping into your power. If you're in your shadow aspects, it is a very destructive channel, as anything in your human design can be. So when you're in your shadow, it can be very, very detrimental to yourself and also the people around you. And he has 2 full penta channels already by himself, the 4629 and the 155. So these are going to play a major role in the team aspect. And also, so one of the themes that comes into play here is that supporting people outside of this group of friends was extremely important to him. So that's where the first thing I Googled was charities regarding to Mathew Perry. And yes, there was a charity that was created. I don't know if it was before or after his death. I'm assuming it was after his death, but he was always heavily involved in supporting others get over their drug problems. The interesting aspect, I was digging a little deeper into his chart, and it was severely important for him to really take care of himself. So he should have first filled up his own cup instead of worrying about others. And sadly, this backfired because he wasn't able to do that for whichever reason, which we of course don't know because we're not close to him. But the fact that he wasn't able to take care of himself first really shifted the entire balance of the chart as well. He is a 2-4 generator, and he was aware of his generator energy, so it's a conscious definition. He is consciously defined through the 4629 channel, which means that taking care of his physical body was also a very important part. So sadly, for some reason, he was just not supported enough from the get-go, probably. Maybe there was a challenging family dynamics. As I said, I sadly don't know much about his history, but maybe you can share more about that if you do know more about that.
I don't know much about his early life, but I know that he needed the laughs and he would rephrase jokes, like as the character, for, I guess, that immediate satisfaction. And if he did not get the laughs, it was basically like extremely detrimental to his psyche. And that's, I mean, his Mathew was relying on Chandler's laughs for satisfaction and recognition, right? So that's scary, and I think also challenging as a human to separate those two, right? And I think as you and I, at least, as entrepreneurs, can kind of understand that, right? Like separating the business from our personal, like ourselves. But it's hard when you are the business, right? So I'm thinking about that from an actor's POV and separating the character from who you are. But I think he had a lot of challenges separating the character from who he was, and unfortunately resorted to drugs and alcohol to kind of mend that gap. That's kind of the extent to what I know. But do you see anything in his chart that would kind of lead more towards, I guess, abuse of those things, if that's recognizable?
I think this is a very sensitive topic that we would have to dive deeper into and actually have a conversation with him, because human design can show us both the potential and the shadow aspect of things. But if in the end, only the individual themselves has to be open and honest about it to themselves, not even to the human design reader, but to themselves, to understand where they are currently standing. There is an undefined emotional solar plexus, which means that he was taking in the emotions of others, and he was potentially probably amplifying them. So he was a very, very sensitive person, because his chart is quite open. He's only consciously defined sacral to G center, and everything else, so the sacral, G center, and will center are all unconsciously defined. But he's also taking in the pressure from the root center. He's from others. He's taking in the health challenges that others have around him, and that is if he's not taking care of his own aura. So if you're not taking care of your own physical, emotional, spiritual, mental, and energetic well-being, you are more susceptible to other people's energies. And that is one aspect. He is taking in the inspiration, and he's got an open head, an undefined ajna, and an undefined throat as well. So he's probably also someone that was quite good at doing accents or kind of mimicking others or something like this, and to also be able to speak the voices of others. So he was, when you're communicating with someone with an open throat, they can often take on the voices or the way that someone needs to be spoken to actually be heard. I find that a really amazing potential for open throats, or undefined throats. But sometimes it is misunderstood, and people are thinking, oh, why are you changing your voice? Or why are you changing your accent? Or pretending to be something or someone that you're not. But yeah, so there's a lot of openness where he could have taken on a lot of challenges as well of identifying with something that he is not. And also the unconsciously defined ego is still more susceptible than the consciously defined ego to feeling not good enough, especially when you haven't taken time to sit down and really do some self-reflection and to really, this is where human design becomes super helpful, because when you understand that you have the defined ego, but it's unconscious, then you may still show signs and symptoms of an undefined ego where you continuously try to compete with others, continuously try to be the best, like you're describing, being someone that needed the laughs and trying to prove himself to others, his worth to others. So all of this can play a role. And then, of course, going deeper into the gates and detriments and exaltations, it all needs to be analyzed to really understand what happened there.
I can understand, as a pretty open person, only having my throat and ego defined, how easy it can be to take in other people's energies and amplify it, though, right? So if you are not understanding that that's not your energy, it can be very hard to let go of it. And I think for probably the first 25 plus years of my life, I did that, right? So I understand how that could happen to someone. Not justifying it necessarily, but I think at least having a perspective of like, yeah, you might think that that's your energy if you're around it all the time. And that just might be something that becomes part of you, very, very conditioned, and then it's hard to get rid of because you think it's you.
Yeah. And on top of that, he also has the right angle cross of contagion. I don't know how to say that. But that is also kind of pushing him to say yes to a lot of things. And if he's not aware that he needs to look for satisfaction and only say yes to the things that satisfy him, that could also be a potential challenge for him, where he was really stuck in frustration a lot because he said yes to too many things that were actually not satisfying to him, but simply just to please someone or to help someone, or yeah. Do you have anything else to add to Mathew Perry?
No, that was absolutely beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Then the next one we're going to be talking about is Matt LeBlanc. And I thought that was very interesting because he's a mental projector. And I didn't expect that somehow. I also didn't expect David Schwimmer to be a mental projector, but
what?
Yeah.
Guys, I didn't research any of the guys, so I'm really stoked about all of this.
And he's a 6'2". So Matt LeBlanc, 6'2", yeah, mental projector. And so his strategy, if you don't know how mental projectors' strategies work, is they definitely 100% need to be at the right place at the right time. And I would say he did a great job at doing that when he showed up with just $11 in his pocket to the Friends casting. Well done. I don't know if he was invited to go to this cast. Maybe he had someone telling him, hey, you should go to that casting place, and then it would have just been the perfect combination. But yeah, a 6'2" mental projector needs to make decisions by first being in the right place at the right time, but also speaking it out. So it's really about, that's why they call it the external inner authority, or the outer inner authority, basically, because they don't have an inner authority per se within themselves. However, they need to kind of go around speaking to the right people at the right time, at the right place, but they need to speak to the right people and use them as a sounding board. So the more that they talk about something that they want an answer to, the more at some point they will hear it in their own voice when it sounds correct to them. It's not about asking permission, about saying, hey, can you help me get an answer for this? No, it's just about sharing what you're feeling, and at some point you will gain clarity about it. And he also has an entirely open G center and an entirely open emotional solar plexus. So there are a few gates pointing to the emotional center, as well as to one gate pointing to the G center. But I really think that this whole friends situation really gave him a lot of direction and clarity as well. We will see that in the Penta in a little bit. But very, very open chart, very receptive to other people's energies. And here as well, you can see that when you're just going into the design, you still have both centers defined. However, when you're going into the personality, you also have a reflector. And I think this is an element within actors that is super beneficial to have a lot of openness, because they can, when they're standing in front of another person or when they're acting with other people, they can just reflect back to them. So they can just pick up whatever they're saying. There may be a lot of spontaneous just interactions with them as well. And they can just go with the flow more easily. It doesn't mean that that's necessarily right for him, but I know that a few of the blooper scenes, for example, or a few of the scenes in general that made it into Friends were actually not written the way that they were written. No, were actually not written the way that they came out, that way around. So yeah, I think that also had to do with a lot of reflector energy being around.
Fun fact, Joey broke his arm. Okay, so Matt LeBlanc broke his arm as Joey. I can't remember what season it is, but he was in the girls' apartment and he was trying to get to the chair, like the armchair before Chandler was, and he hopped over the ottoman and ended up eating shit over the ottoman and breaking his arm as he landed into the chair. And in the next episode, he has a broken arm, and I can't remember what the excuse was, but
they just continued playing. You didn't see it.
Yeah.
So even in the next episode, when he was wearing all of Chandler's clothes, because this is one, of course, that I watched, and I really needed to get more details about this, because I was like, no way he continued playing. But yeah, he just continued playing, and the arm was just hanging there. I mean, you don't see it when you don't know it, but when you know it, you see it. And I thought that was also, I was going to get to that one when we were talking about the Penta.
Sorry, guys. Okay, forget you ever heard that story and add in another one. I'm pretty sure those were 2 different seasons, though, if that's any consolation. He literally breaks his arm in one, and then there's another episode where he wears all of his clothing.
No, I think it's that one.
I'm going to Google it really quick.
You would know better than I, but...
Let's go to the resident Friends expert here.
Yes, exactly. No, but no matter which one, for sure, he broke his arm, and they kind of blamed the fact that they didn't do the huddle. So before every episode, the Friends cast would come together and do a huddle. And they would do this religiously before every episode. And the reason why I wanted to mention this when we were talking about the Penta, is because this is a part of their Penta, to have rituals and to have specific things that they do. They didn't do it in this one episode where Joey broke his arm. And when they then in the future asked, hey, shall we do the huddle? We barely have time. Joey said, or Matt LeBlanc said, hell yeah, I don't want anything else to fall off. So I was like, okay.
Every time you say what's it called? The beautiful nature that they shared together, within the Penta, I get chills. Yeah. Because I feel like that's how aligned it is for all 6 of them to have been together in this way for 10 years. How freaking cool, man. It's like literally the casting director just like chose 6 best friends.
And it's also interesting because a lot of their either either unconscious or conscious sun and earths are actually in the Penta. So it is super important for them to, or this part of their lives was very important for them, for some more than others, of course. More supportive for some more than others as well. Very interesting.
So cool. And actually, both Mathew Perry and Jennifer Aniston had pilots, like pilot shows with different shows that same season. And they basically had to choose, like, both of their pilots got dropped for the other shows. But basically, they would have had to choose between that pilot or continuing with Friends. And like,
lucky. Good choice.
Dude, they chose well. Oh, this chart is very interesting to me because, like, if you think of the character of Joey, it doesn't relate. But obviously, we don't know Matt LeBlanc, like, really in real life. I've just seen him in interviews and the way he presents himself in interviews. But I think the reflector aspect of it, you're right, really does lead into being an actor who can understand the person who's in front of them. And I feel like that helped all 3 of the ladies, and obviously now Matt LeBlanc. I don't recall Chandler. Oh my
Mathew
God.
Perry.
Mathew Perry didn't have this in his chart. He's the only one who didn't have the reflector aspect. Yeah. If I recall correctly. Yeah. It's very interesting.
Yeah. I also find it fascinating. And again, sharing as his major circuitry. So very collective again, not so much tribal energies. Yes, there are some tribal gates, but in and of itself, it's mainly about sharing for him.
Yeah. And I feel like that probably wasn't a strong suit. And also, as someone who is extremely tribal, it's very interesting for me to see people who are self-empowering come together in this way. Because I don't know, it just doesn't compute, but I really resonate with this cast. So it's cool to be able to see that in a way that makes sense to me as well. Hopefully you guys are getting this too, and it's not just us.
Well, if not, they need to watch the show and they'll get it if they haven't. Okay, let's move to David Schwimmer. Just keep saying the full names. Yeah, I just keep saying the full names just to be respectful, because I'm like, okay, I don't actually know you guys, even though you feel like friends after watching the Friends episode. But yeah, it's I find that interesting with stars that are continuously there, and then they're also continuously embodying the same character for so long. You start to see that character, and I can imagine that being super challenging for them as well, to when they step out of that role and they finally just want to get rid of it, and then they still are being called Rachel, Ross, Monica, Chandler, and Joey on the street. I think must be very annoying after a while, even though it is a great, it's a legacy that they created, and it really is an extremely supportive. I mean, when I was watching a few YouTube videos earlier, I saw one of the comments was the cheapest therapy session ever. And I think that's one comment that comes to mind for so many people. As you also mentioned, it's like your go-to feel good show that you're watching. So yeah, they have a lot to be proud of.
I mentioned this off air before we started, but I definitely started watching Friends at like the age of 6. My grandparents just like didn't care what I watched when my parents weren't home. So my exposure to like sex and that discussion happened at like the age of 6 by watching Friends. And then I just like continued to watch it. I vividly remember, like, I don't know how it came up in conversation, but I was like, oh yeah, Mom, sex. She's like, how do you know that word? I was like 6 or 7. I was like, Friends? She's like, you can't watch that anymore. Definitely still watched it. Sorry, Ma.
But she knew that you were talking about the show and not just your friends at school or something.
Oh yeah, no, definitely this show. And then there was another show like Married with Children that was like even worse that I definitely couldn't watch, but like Friends was still acceptable. I remember watching the finale live. I was only like 12 and I was watching the finale live.
Wow, crazy. So long ago. My God.
Yeah, fuck, it is. That was 20 years ago. Oh my God. Jesus.
I'll come back to reality. Oop, there goes gravity.
Please keep rapping.
Not appropriate right now. Okay, so David Schwimmer. We have no clarity whatsoever when he was born. So there is one chart at 4:14, one at 12, one at 22. Not much changes. It's the moon that is shifting, of course. Everything else pretty much stays the same. The profile also changes from time to time, but we are just going to stick to the sweet middle, because within that time frame, 2 hours before and 2 hours after, not that much changes, apparently. And as you can see throughout the day, not that much changes either, but we're just going to focus on this chart. In either one of the charts, he still remains a mental projector as well, just like Matt LeBlanc. And he is as well, he has a heavy circuitry on empowerment and sharing. So they all have, as I said, a lot of collective and individual energies within them, which is really, as Celestina already mentioned, it is interesting to see a team with so much individualism and still being able to make it work. He has the entire lower body graph undefined. So he's, as I said, a mental projector, again, has the same inner authority as Matt LeBlanc, where he needs to have sounding boards to talk to make decisions. To me, Ross makes sense as well as a mental projector. I could see that. Matt LeBlanc as Joey, you're right. That for me is also something that is harder to see. But David Schwimmer as Ross, both could be a mental projector. How do you feel about that? Yeah.
Dude, 100%. Super nerdy. Like, I feel like his character, too, always goes to the friends for, like, life advice. You know, marriage number 3, girlfriend, God knows how many. He, like, always goes to them for advice. Whereas Joey's character, at least, presents a lot more confidence. So it's interesting to see someone who may actually need to speak to their friends about it be the human behind the person who's playing that character as well.
He also has the right angle cross of the 4 ways. So while he goes around sharing his thoughts on the decisions that he wants to make to then receive an answer back, he's actually also someone that people go to for advice. So this is his role in life. He's someone that can guide others. It's not just because he's a projector, but in general, the cross of the 4 ways has a lot of this energy regarding understanding and knowing which advice to give and seeing the potential in others. There's also a lot of changes in the cross of the 4 ways. So within the cross of the 4 ways, the life segments are also often divided into several different aspects. So it could be 3 different lives, 4 different lives. Just in general, you will lead different lives throughout your one lifetime. He also has an entirely open ego, actually. So he has the 25th gate pointing towards the 51. And that can lead to as well a lot of this desire of needing to be seen, needing to be good enough, not feeling good enough as well, wanting to be first, wanting to be the best. There could have been some conflict around this area as well with the girls. So I really would have loved to just sit down with everyone and have a conversation of how they feel about all of these aspects and really digging deeper into it, because what we're doing right now is still a very superficial look on these designs. He has the 4323 channel, the Genius to Freak channel, which I actually really enjoy it, because what comes out of these people can be either genius, or it can lead to others looking at them as if they were freaks. When they're sharing it in the wrong time and they're not waiting for invitation, that can happen. So you can be regarded as a freak or a genius depending on when you're sharing your things. So the 23rd gate for him is in the north node, and the 43rd gate is in his south node. So it's more of an environmental impact in his chart. So that means he needs to be in an environment that kind of brings out this genius to freak side of him as well, or that reflects it within his environment. So he can see a lot of people having this split-sided personality as well, and that's an environment that he would thrive in. And the other channel that he has is the 6447 channel, which is a more creative or more abstract channel than the other side, the 63-4 channel. So the 63-4 is more logical, while the other one is more abstract in nature. And he has some gates in the Penta, which we are going to take a look at now.
Quick note before we dive super into that. Question for you. So we have 3 projectors, 2 manifestors, and a generator. Very interesting. I feel like there's so much speculation there, right? But like, I wonder if he felt like an outcast. I wonder if Mathew Perry felt like an outcast in this group. And not to say that they didn't welcome him with like loving and open arms, right? But I wonder if he like inherently felt something different. And I don't know. I don't know what it feels like to feel like a generator, right? But I wonder if he just felt different amongst them.
Good question. I would love an answer from him. Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah.
When I just look at it without even looking at human design, without even just knowing them personally or anything like that, I actually had more of a feeling that David Schwimmer felt more like an outcast. That to me, intuitively, instinctively felt more the case than Mathew Perry feeling like an outcast. And I think it may also, I don't know why I feel like this about David Schwimmer, but Mathew Perry has this warm and enveloping aura, and he does have 2 projectors to guide him theoretically. So I feel like he would still have a lot of care and nurturing from the others if he needed. And I do feel like this is the support that he received. How did you feel when you were, I don't remember what they were saying or talking about in the reunion of Friends that much.
I mean, he was not very distant from the others, but he would like show up to set like shit-faced and drunk, right? Like with like alcohol in his breath. And I think the others, not that they felt bad, but like they knew, and what could they say? But I think that they were still very warm and enveloping of him because of the human that he was. R.I.P. Yeah, it's so interesting, because also knowing like that piece of it and like what he went through and having to go to rehab between seasons. I think it was between seasons 5 and 6. It was the episode where Monica proposed to him, and then he subsequently proposed to Monica. But like at the end of one season, he was overweight, and then at the following season, he was very thin, or vice versa, something like that. He was very thin, and then he had gained a bit of weight. Yeah, so that was a very long answer to it. I don't know. I think he was well supported in that space, but it's just so interesting to see him still like need satisfaction from elsewhere, and the validation from elsewhere.
Yeah, and he was one of them that had, he has 3 of his major planets. So 2 suns and 1 unconscious Earth in the Penta energy. So I think for him, this was a big part of who he was, and a big part of identifying who he was through this Friends episode in his life.
His era. Use a Taylor Swift verbiage, his era.
His Friends era. Okay, so the Penta energies. I don't have it on my computer, actually. I only have it on my phone. But we're going to go through it a bit verbally. So the first channel that we're looking at when we're looking at the Penta is the 31-7 channel. So we're first looking at Lisa Kudrwo, who is the main lead in this aspect, and David Schwimmer has the 31 as well in his chart. But Lisa Kudrwo has the full channel, and that means for the 31, it's all about discipline and administration. So this is about setting clear rules and expectations, and we're looking at it either from a family perspective or from a business perspective, and I think both applies here. So I think they are somewhat of a family, maybe not genetically, but definitely friendship-wise. For them, they have created a family, and they are also a business. So it's also about making sure that everyone is fulfilling their roles. So this would be a business aspect. It's also about staying on top of all the tasks. The family aspect as well as maintaining discipline within this group. So this is both David Schwimmer and Lisa Kudrwo that would take over this role. The other side of this channel is Gate 7, and this was only and all about Lisa because she's the only one that has this gate. And this is about future and planning. So future regarding family and planning regarding business. So regarding this aspect, it's about planning for the future and keeping an eye out on future trends and analyzing changes in the environment to keep the growth and stability of this group alive. And from a business perspective, it's being able to move forward successfully through proper planning, researching, and development, including having the right team in place. So I thought this was a good start to talk about this. What do you think about this when you look at the cast?
That's really interesting. I wonder if she was like the forefront in like getting them amped up for like coming together and like starting a new season. I'm trying to think of the verbiage that they used during the reunion of the first time that they met, like at the table read, and I don't recall it right now, but I wonder if she was at the forefront of that and like leading them towards like everyone coming together at the table read. Now I'm gonna have to go watch the reunion episode again. Jeez.
I was also thinking, we should have totally watched that before jumping on here.
I've watched it 3 times and it came out like 2 years ago.
Okay.
That's what I do with my downtime, guys.
Just hanging out with friends.
Literally.
Being anti-socially social.
It's my favorite. Yeah, I would love to have the conversation with them and see what their dynamic was and learn a little bit more about that. But
me too.
It's really cool that she had this role in that.
Yeah.
I wonder if she was the one who insisted on pay. Do you know about that? I don't recall who that was.
No, this comes later on. I think this is not really the channel for that aspect. But yeah, I would also really like to know who insisted on that. I have no idea who initiated it. I'm sure that it was definite. I think it's definitely a mutual feeling from all of it and a genuine mutual feeling. But yeah,
Agreed.
I would love to know who then said, okay, guys, let's just go and do it. But maybe we find out as we go through the Penta. So then we have channel 8-1. So this is all the ladies have it. None of the guys have it because we have one generator that has no connection to the throat. And then we have 2 mental projectors that don't have any self-defined. We have Lisa, Courtney, Jennifer, and Mathew that has the 8. The 8th gate, and that is about demonstration in family and public relations in business. So it is about effectively demonstrating and modeling desired behaviors and values in the family. So I figured that this was especially important to Mathew, actually. because I think he has the 27 or the 50th gate. Yeah, he has the 27th gate defined. And that is about caring and nourishment. So he has it in the 27-1. So this channel, the 5027, is all about values as well. Very important. And then he did also have, he had his design sun in the 15.4, which we will be talking about later on. But basically the design moon is about emotional, what you need emotionally to feel good about yourself. So this also played a role of why I think that the Friends era was so important to him as a support. So in the business sense, it's about the ability to compel clients to engage with the brand. And in this case, the brand was their show. All three ladies, and then Mathew, they were probably the driving force to compel others to really identify with this brand. And I feel that as actually pretty accurate. I mean, to me, these four really stand out when it comes to Friends. I mean, yeah, Joey, of course, as well. And yes, Ross as well. But they were really the driving force behind it.
I agree.
You agree?
Yeah, I agree.
And then we have gate one from, again, Lisa. Then we also have Courtney and Jennifer. And we also have David Schwimmer in here, with his south node. So during that period, it was probably pretty important for him as well, because it was before his 40s. But after his 40s, this became a bit less important. So the gate one is about self-expression within this Penta. So it's about being able to fully present and engage in the current moment, which is also, I mean, when I was watching the bloopers or the amount of fun that they were having on set, I was like, oh God, yeah, they're really enjoying themselves. And that is what it's all about, really enjoying the present moment, being attentive and open to new experiences. In the business aspect, it's also about having the capacity to deliver the goods. So I'm doing quote unquote here for everyone that's not watching. But delivering the goods, I mean, yes, they had to deliver the goods. Even in a comedy show, they had to deliver the jokes and really come across as being a genuine circle of friends.
And I think what helped is that they were actually a genuine, like, friendship group, right? Like, I think that's really comes across on the camera, because if they hated each other off set, I feel like that would show. But my understanding is, like, I think it was maybe like 4 or 5 episodes in, one of the producers took them all to Vegas, and they were like, guys, here's like $100-$200, spend it in the casinos, because this is the last time you're going to be able to be like not famous people out in public in Vegas. And they did. And literally after that, it blew up. And I don't think it was necessarily because, I mean, yes, their dynamic on set is fantastic, but I think that dynamic on set wholeheartedly comes from the beautiful relationship that they fostered with each other as humans off set.
Yeah. And this is also why we're talking about their personal birth charts, because it represents this Penta connection that they're sharing. And a Penta is normally just up to 5 people. We're doing it for 6 people right now. But this dynamic and this energy that they all share with one another, it works. You can see it offset, onset, wherever they are. Very beautiful connection. Then we have gate 3313. So this is from the throat to the G center all the way to the right, if you're looking at the chart. And it is about oversight in family and tradition oversight in business and tradition in family. So it's about the ability to maintain and pass down traditions to preserve its history and values, and actively engaging to maintain these traditions to provide a sense of stability and continuity. And in business, it is about overseeing the entire operation and being the eyes and ears of the business, keeping an eye on both cast, so employees, and fans, aka clients. And it's basically a form of a gatekeeper to maintain the integrity and security of the company's or of this cast's information as well. And this is mostly connected to Matt LeBlanc and David Schwimmer. So I found that also very interesting, that these two were kind of the gatekeepers and handling problems that arise internally. I would really love to see and to know if this is true. And on the other side, that's the only place where the Friends cast has this gap, quote unquote. So none of them have it, but none of them need to have it, because I'm sure, there are people that are responsible for accounting in this case. So this is more connected to the past when it comes to family, and accounting when it comes to business. And it's the ability to learn and reflect on the past and understanding and appreciating the history of the family. So in this case, the Friends family, and actively seeking lessons and insights from the past. So it's about gaining a deeper understanding of origins and values of the family and avoiding repeating old mistakes. Yeah, that can be pretty handy, but when we're looking at the business side of it, the ability to accurately track and measure the profitability of the business, regularly monitoring the numbers and staff informed about the financial health. And stuff informed about the financial health. So this aspect is something that they don't need to have, because I'm sure other people are looking at the numbers. Looking at the past within a friends group is helpful if you don't want to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. But I feel it's also possible to do that if you're just being reflective and using some other elements in the other gates that are defined in your charts. So I don't think it's that necessary to have it in this friends group. And obviously it wasn't, otherwise it wouldn't have worked for 10 years. Would you like to share something about this?
No, but this is very insightful for my own personal life, so thank you.
You're very welcome. Then we have 15.5, the channel that is below the G center on the left side, connecting to the sacral. Courtney Cox has it, Mathew Perry has it. In Courtney Cox's design, it's in her Venus and personality North node, so it's something that she's consciously aware of. And in Mathew Perry, it's the design Moon, and it is about inner flow and reliability. So that's what I mean, that for Mathew Perry, this is where he gained his emotional stability from. So when this was fulfilled. And it is about the ability to understand the strengths and weaknesses of each and using it to the advantage of the group. And I feel he was probably pretty good at that. This is business related and family related, and still business related, creating a team that can work together towards a common goal. And then family related, maintaining a sense of flow and balance within the family or within this cast or friends group. And being aware of the emotions and needs of each individual and fostering a sense of harmony and connection within the family. I don't know, but I feel like this was also mentioned during the reunion, that he was someone that kind of cracked them up and brought up the spirit and made people feel good. And yeah, Celestina is just nodding her head wildly.
I wonder how much of that is, because when you were talking about open throat before, and like being able to like mimic others, I immediately went to Robin Williams and I looked up his chart, and he also had an open throat. So I wonder how much of that, we can look at his chart separately like in the future, but I wonder how much of that is like looking for the comedic relief, but also getting so much satisfaction from seeing others smile, seeing others laugh, feeling others' emotion, and that like empathetic piece of it, and thriving off of that empathetic piece, you know?
The open throat plays a part in, I think, being able to connect with others on that level. So being able to really reach the words and the intonations and everything that they need to hear to really make other people laugh and connect with other people on that front. Regarding wanting or needing this return of validation, I think that resides in other places of the chart.
That's fair.
But yeah, I would love to look at him.
Yeah, how much of that do you think relates to this channel in particular then, if any?
I think this is an important part of Mathew Perry's role in this friends group. So we're right now, because this is just related to Penta energies, when you look at it in an individual aspect, the 15-5 has many other meanings. As we know, it has to do about rhythm and flow and your own rituals and habits. It also has to do with the love for humanity. So it is very diverse. It's one of the love gates as well. So there are many ways to look at it. Also with the lines, which is not something that I took into much account here at the moment. But there are just many levels that we can dive deeper into. And I think in this constellation for Mathew Perry, it was very important to feel like he could make people feel good and improve the work that they're doing together and to meet other people's emotional needs as well. And for him, he gained satisfaction through doing that as well.
Just kind of knowing his past, his outcome, his drug use, I wonder how much in tune he was with this in particular, and perhaps how unaligned he was in that, because there was so much that he was seeking externally, like that external validation more so than feeling it internally. So I wonder how, not even how significant this was, because it was pretty significant, obviously, but I wonder how much he internalized those external feelings of validation versus the self-worth internally. You know, I feel like that's
absolutely
very apparent in this channel in particular.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think I know where you're kind of hinting to with this, as in, because when you're not balanced, you're doing more things for others than for yourself. And it's not really necessarily a healthy form of doing things, because you're taking things more personal. And if you're taking things more personal than making other people laugh or not, you will also be taking either of those things personal. So you will either feel bad when they don't or feel good when they do. So you're really placing a lot of emphasis on what other people around you are feeling and doing, and that reflects on your mood instead of just having this come from the inside. So yeah, I agree.
That's heavy, man. Whew, that's heavy. Even for Penta energy, that's heavy. Oof.
Then we also have the 5th gate, which he also has defined with his Mars. So he has it twice in his Mars, conscious and unconscious. And the Mars energy is something that is very naive at the beginning. It's something that needs to be worked out. So it's something that you need to grow into, basically. And in this case, it's about home and culture. So it's about creating and maintaining a sense of home within a family. So for him as well, this was very, very important, this Friends era. It makes me sad to even go through all of this. Then we have identifying and creating physical, emotional, and spiritual spaces. That was important for him within. So I really would love to see if there was such a place behind the scenes. I mean, they had the couch. Yes, that is a spiritual, physical, and emotional place for all of them. They had the central cafe. They had their apartments. But I wonder if there were also spaces behind the scenes which he kind of created to bring the cast together, or even outside of the studio, of course, to bring the place together, to bring the cast together, to make them feel good, and to help them actively engage in and nurture those spaces and the ability to establish an inner life of an office or team. That was also very important for him, by establishing some kind of a behavior that feels good to the group. So it could be either a dress code or a time of meeting, or maybe even the huddle. I mean, this will also come up later on when we are talking about the rituals as well. But the huddle was a big thing for them. It was an important thing for them. And this could have been also Mathew Perry's push towards doing that, because it's like a business culture that you're developing. Then we have the gate 2, or the channel 214. And gate 2 is David Schwimmer's domain and Courtney Cox's domain as well. So Courtney Cox has it in her personality Jupiter, and David Schwimmer has it in his personality North Node. So again, it's probably more of Courtney Cox's domain, because the North Node didn't really play that big of a role at that point yet. But Courtney Cox's Jupiter, if you know human design, you need to always listen to your Jupiter. Otherwise, your Saturn will punish you. Yeah, very important that she follows through with this. It's about material and vision. And it's about utilizing and managing material resources effectively to provide a stable and secure environment, and identifying the best way to utilize the resources and funds. So the first one is regarding family, and the second one is regarding business. And it also, of course, the second gate is about providing a direction to the group. So I wonder if she was someone that was leading the direction as well for the group. Can you share a little bit about that? Do you know if that was the case?
I don't. I was literally Googling it in the moment.
Okay, good. I will leave you to that, and you can share after. We'll talk about.
They entered collective negotiations to get everyone the same amount. So I think, like, going off of what you said earlier, of like everyone wanting the resources to be shared equally, I think they all kind of had that same vibe. Maybe she was the leader in that space. I don't know. The interwebs don't tell me that. But hold up. Mathew Perry says Friends co-star David Schwimmer suggested the cast negotiate their contracts so that they'd all be paid equally. There you go.
Interesting. We covered all of David Schwimmer regarding his roles in the Penta, at least.
Yeah, very interesting. Because he does have this gate. So it's interesting that, right? You just said that.
Yes, he does have the second gate.
So yeah, you were putting it on Courtney, which, women power. But awesome for David to be able to fight for everyone getting the same equal pay as well. So that's awesome. Because he also has this gate, so it makes sense that he'd also be like, equal pay, bruh.
Well, I was actually looking more at the other gates that he has, which is also the self-expression, which was delivering the goods, the capacity to deliver the goods. So for me, I have a feeling that this may be where he was, and he was in his South Node phase at this point. So this is in his South Node. So I have a feeling that maybe he wanted to deliver the goods to the whole group. So that would be gate 1. And apart from that, he also had the administration aspect, so discipline and administration, having clear rules and expectations and making sure that everyone is fulfilling their roles, staying on top of all tasks, maintaining discipline within the family. But to me, it speaks more regarding the first gate. It could also be that the North Node has kicked in at some point already a little bit. Then we have gate 14, which is the other side of this channel, and Lisa's personality Moon and Jennifer's personality and design Neptune and design Sun. So design Sun is one of the big planets that are very important when you're looking at a human design chart. And we also have Mathew Perry's personality and design Neptune and design Earth. So lots of energies here in this one, in the 14th gate, which is about capacity and demands. So manage and balance the demands and responsibilities within a family, being aware of the needs and obligations of each individual and actively seeking ways to support one another, identifying and acquiring the correct resources. That would be for the business, so funding personal equipment, etc., and being able to attract and generate resources for the business. The fact that Jennifer and Mathew Perry have this in their Neptunes can be a little bit veiled to them. However, Mathew Perry has it in his design Earth, which is still unconscious in his design, and Jennifer has it in her design Sun. So also unconscious elements. The only one that is more aware of this probably is Lisa Kudrwo, as this is in her personality Moon, which means that this is kind of her why, her reason why she's doing things. So yeah, maybe, I don't know, you were mentioning that she had a bit of a family, motherly aspect. And this sounds to me...
Could very well be, yeah.
That also, I mean, apart from being the leader and things like that, if she was invited into the leadership position, but also just identifying and acquiring the correct resources and being aware of the needs and obligations of each individual. That sounds very motherly.
Oh, now I need to look up the nickname that they had for her.
Yes. You do that. I will go to the next channel, the last one. This is the 4629, and we have Lisa's personality Mars, Jennifer's personality South Node, and both of her Uranuses and design Jupiter. That is about discovery and coordination. So it's about fostering a sense of discovery and exploration within this group of friends, encouraging and supporting individual curiosity and creativity, and being able to establish a group and turning it into a cohesive functioning unit, establishing a shared frequency to work together towards a common goal or, business potentially. So I thought, Lisa and Jennifer, again, very interesting as a duo to really raise the frequency. And also when you look at Phoebe, of course she would be raising frequencies. Did you find out the nickname?
They called her Floosh. Floosh.
Okay, I see.
But I think the guides called her something else. I have to double check on that, like during the reunion.
Okay. Then we have the 29th, the last gate in this Penta, and that is covered by personality Son of Mathew Perry, and that is about world and commitment. And this is what I was referring to earlier on, where it is about connecting with and engaging in a larger world outside of the family, actively seeking ways to engage and contribute to the broader community and global environment, and having a group commit to a goal and achieve it. So this is connected to supporting individuals that are suffering from addictions and helping them as well. So for him, it was important to not just do something within this friends group, but really expanding this power that they have created through this 10-year era, but to bring that to other people as well and to support other people in whichever their goal is. In this case, their goal is to remain sober or become sober. Just wish he would have managed to also have the support for him, or to find the right ways for himself as well. That is it.
That was a really insightful and also really fun episode. And now I'm going to go watch an episode of Friends before I go to bed.
I wonder how many out there are going to do the same after listening to this episode.
If you don't, what are you even doing with your life?
I'm jumping on Inside Timer in a second.
Or that.
Well, that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed this a lot, and I wish we had some feedback from the actual cast to understand and know the dynamics behind the scenes. We'll maybe need to wait a few more years for that, but I'm sure it will come.
We're going to invite all of you guys, since most of you are projectors, into it. And if you want to come on, please feel free.
Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you do want to reach out to us, feel free to do so on our Instagram at HardcoreHD Podcast. And we hope to see you next time.
We do hope to see you next time, but also because we haven't asked, guys, if you love this podcast, please rate and review on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on whatever platform you listen on. It helps out the show a bunch, and we would just love to know what you think. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Ciao.